I'm Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter, and welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Look, I know we've said this before. Bonnie and I have a tendency to fan our guests when we have them. So first off, I'm going to mention our guest today is James Wells. And unfortunately, I have to fan James at a bit of a different level because I think about three past guests that we have had. Mary Greer, obviously, Liz Worth, Susie Chang, where I mentioned the impact that their practices had on my own. James's impact actually comes at a completely different level for me. So James would have been, I think I had my first tarot reading with James back in 2009. I don't know if you remember. I think Kelly gifted it to me before she was even my fiance. My son had his first tarot reading, and I think his only tarot reading, considering his dad is a tarot reader, is saying something.
I remember that.
With James. My very first workshop that I think I attended, you led. I have led workshops that you initiated. We just, before kind of hitting record, we mentioned Joanna Colbert, but I think of Mary Greer. I think of Marilyn Shannon. James was the first person who actually invited me to speak at a tarot conference.
That's right.
I am sitting here with his only published or full published book, although he has done everything from articles to forewords, to chapters in other books. So his book is called Tarot for Manifestation. The other book, because he does training in this area, is by Christina Baldwin, Calling the Circle. There is not a single tarot practitioner who has had more personal influence on my own practice. So when I talk about the idea of being humbled and pleased to have someone join us here, there is no one I can think of that exemplifies those words of gratitude for being in this space than James Wells. So having said all of those things, and a huge thank you for joining us, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him as a practitioner. So his overall practice is a dedication to providing insight and evolution actually for individuals and groups. And he does this as a tarot consultant, as an author, as a circle and council process host, and a Reiki teacher. James is actually based in Toronto, Ontario, self-described in a whole bunch of ways. He says caring, cranky, funny, skilled, realistic, I would add kind and compassionate. When he's not in his professional mode, big fan of good food, outdoor walks, and sleeping. So, which I think
we were just talking about sleeping.
We were literally talking about naps as we're recording this. This is kind of in the middle of what could typically be my nap time, but there's no way I could have a nap right now. I just want to say thank you so much and welcome. Big long wind. Bonnie and I have talked about we got to shorten our intros, and I said not today, not today. So welcome. If we've missed anything, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself.
First of all, I'm gobsmacked by the intro. Thank you.
Well, you had to figure that something like that was and maybe you're not aware of the influence that you've had on my practice, but we've mentioned this. I've mentioned this many times in our podcast. In that, not the sole influence, but by far the earliest influence and probably the greatest influence as well in how I approach the tarot. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's lovely to be enshrined in your practices, and I thank you. Yeah, and lovely to be with you and Bonnie. I met Bonnie, first of all, at Nancy Antonucci's workshop last autumn in November. And I got to re-see you after so long, Peter, at that point, and that was a joy.
It was lovely.
It was sorry, Peter has spoken so highly of you, James. And I was like, oh my gosh, I finally get to meet James when I met you at the workshop. And then having you on the podcast is such an honor. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on it. This is lovely because this is something that happens is, I was taught by, mentored by, held by, encouraged by so many very good people, and they became friends and they became colleagues. After reading their books and attending their stuff and realizing I love the human part of this person too, and getting to know them on that level, and then me teaching something and blah, blah, and then seeing them now teach and pass on, and last oddly enough November again was a fairly busy month for both attending and doing teaching, and so an old Reiki and tarot student of mine, Jane. You might have met her at that guy on retreat, Peter, years ago, back
possible.
in 2000.
Yeah.
And anyway, she has an ongoing group every other Sunday called, I think she calls it Tea and Tarot. And I hadn't seen her and her husband Chris in ages, and they invited me down to their place in the Niagara region. And she said they were here to get readings from me. Actually, one I forget what day of the week it was, doesn't matter. And I said, well, the following weekend, what are the plans next weekend? Says Jane. I said, well, next Sunday I'm to go to Niagara Falls, and for our friend Bev, who we talked about before we began to record, her younger son and his fiance saved up enough money, they got their own house. That's a big deal for them. And so they asked me if I would go down and do a clearing and then do a blessing of the place. And my old friend Sue and her partner Kathy were there. So it was like reunion as well as ritual time. So Jane said, "Oh, you're coming down? You're coming down. I'll cook dinner for you. We'll make breakfast for you, and you're going to teach my class. How's that?" He said, "Great, done." And it was the following weekend. So I had a full house. She got a full house for me in less than a week, which was very nice.
Wow.
Well, yeah.
Sure,
Go ahead.
So being invited as a sort of old cadre guest for people who learned from me and have now expanded it to have their own style, all of that.
Well, and that's it. It is, and again, I would assume over the course of your practice, you would have had the opportunity as well to connect to some of the mentors that you have had too. And I had mentioned some of the guests that we had. One in particular was Mary Greer. And I remember meeting her for the very first time at a workshop that you had hosted in your space. And I don't know if you remember this or not at all, but you had asked me if we could go and pick her up. And I think it was the bus station in Toronto. And I remember almost wanting to get a T-shirt made that said Mary Greer was in my car. And I had to explain to people who are not connected to the tarot that, that's a big deal. That's like, a Leaf fan saying Austin Matthews was in the front seat of my car. Right? So,
Remember the first time I ever had her up, I was living a different neighborhood here and renting from a lovely woman, friend of mine, Buffy. Anyway, and Mary came up. I first invited Mary Greer up in May of 1998, and because I'd gotten her printed newsletter, which came out once a year, that she and her now ex-husband Ed would put out. And I thought, that's such cool stuff, and they put great stuff on in their home. Oh man, it'd be great to do that. And I thought, wait a minute. Mention somewhere that they would travel. So I contacted her. I said, would you be willing to come? Blah 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 blah. And voila, she did a Friday night workshop on Tarot Readers, Midwife of the Soul, and she did something else on the Saturday and did readings on Sunday, Monday. And I got to know her on a lot level. Same happened later on with Rachel Pollack. I'll get into more of that in a moment, I guess, because I guess we're slightly slipping into my origin story.
Well, we are, and I was going to ask because you've talked about some of the people that have shaped your practice. So we would love to hear. I know our listeners and watchers would love to hear what brought you to the tarot, or as Bonnie sometimes asks, how did the tarot find you? Depending on which
it was that too.
Which way would happen,
right? Water.
Yeah.
It all began in water. My earliest ancestor was an amoeba. Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, maybe not so far back, but as
Picture it, the primeval. Yeah. 1922. Well, I'm going to do two things, Bonnie and Peter. We're going to get two perspectives on my origin story as a tarot practitioner. I think practitioner is a good all-purpose word, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It can cover readers, therapists, collectors, artists, poets, blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah. And it does, if I may, I always think the root of the word as well around practice also talks about the fact that it is something that is ongoing. We often think about a practitioner offering things in one direction, and yet practice is something that exists, and we'll hopefully get a chance to talk to you about your own personal practice in that guise of practitioner as well. But yeah, thank you for using that word.
Right, I can get some words out.
Yeah. No, it's always my lime juice water is right here.
I've got the same. It's lime cordial, but anyway. All right. The 9th of June, 1967, 10:20 at night. Raging, crashing, flashing thunderstorm, the worst they'd seen in ages in Newmarket, Ontario.
Oh.
And who comes into the world? Little old me.
Oh.
My paternal grandmother, who was a trance medium, a messages medium, a healer, a all-around great psychic, great counselor, and feisty, put up with no shit Scottish one, then declared, the child's name is James Pearson Wells. And that's that. And not long after, she apparently dedicated me to spiritual work. So there was the root right there. Day one.
Wow. Day one.
One day after, the nurse was carrying me to the nurse's station. My mother said, "What are you doing with my son?" And I said, "You've got to see what he's doing." And I was like this, looking at it. Yeah. So already, and I was an impatient baby, as I'm an impatient adult. I hated being a baby body because I hated crawling, and I hated. I knew I could talk, and I knew how to walk. And I finally, at 9 months old, I said, "Okay, get me out of this." And I started walking and talking. Fast forward to I've always had an interest in what might make. It's all speculation, all theology, all spirituality, it's all speculation, but even my own. But anyway, I've always wondered what might make things tick and make people tick, even as a wee bairn. And I was reading mythology. I could read by age 3 because we were read to. So I started reading mythology. I love the Old Testament stories of, Elijah going up in the chariot of fire, and I would be putting an old broken hockey stick over a big puddle of water to try and part the waters like Moses and stuff. And I kid you not, I shit you not. I would find a big marble, and I would look into it, and I would read the crystal ball for my schoolmates, etc. And this is before I really knew who my grandmother was and what she was. I had an inkling. Was it because if I saw lights around the house, one time I saw lights around our living room, and because she lived with us for a few years, when my parents were at work, and I saw a blue light come in the living room. And I was only brought up with the word Papa because my paternal grandfather died before I was born, and my mother's father was called Papa, and so she says, "Yes, Papa." I said, "No, Granddad." And I'd never heard that word before. And she went, "Oh, okay, he's got it." And then I was always interested in always wondering, how do we know what we know when we're not supposed to know it, so to speak? And I'd blurt something out, and my grade 1 teacher, and she'd say, "You can't know that. There's no such thing as magic." I said, "Yes, there is." So how would I know then? And poor Mrs. Patterson. And then, finally, I would borrow books from the library over and over again. And I brought something that I've gone. A couple of you. This book came out in, I think, 1974.
Oh, that was a good year.
Oh, yeah.
Wink, wink.
Let ESP Work for You by Patsy Ruth Welding.
Oh, okay, right. Remember.
She was a psychic who lived in Las Vegas. She was professional in the sense that she had a clientele, but she never charged money for it because she had a job as a secretary and her husband had a good job of it. And but she taught people, mentored people. And this book, I kept taking it out of the library. Years later, when I found it online, like, oh. So when I was 12, there was the section on tarot, which is only about 4 pages long. Mm-hmm. It's not long at all, but she mentions it, and then she talks maybe a couple of anecdotes later on. Was something about it was delicious enough to sort of go, oh, and catch me. And I'll read a short passage, if I may, to say what the passage was, part of it that grabbed me. Okay. And that's when I went out and bought my first deck, which I will show you in a moment, but one thing at a time. As the actress said to the bishop. All right. Did I say page 123? I did. Here it goes. Give him like glasses and then go. All right. Okay. One stack at a time, deal each card out face up. See the colorful, dramatic array of mysterious symbols, people in strange garments, and colorful scenes. You may find some of the scenes frightening at first glance. As you study the meanings of the cards, you will read into each one far beyond the picture presented on its face. The value of these cards is that they depict scenes, happenings, and symbols, many of which are unfamiliar to us. Because they are unfamiliar, our minds will be called upon to sort out the strange pictures. And in trying to interpret them, our minds will reach out in new patterns of thought. Mm-hmm. So I loved that. And that I had turned 12 in June of that year, and it was getting close to September. And that's when I really got that passage. And I thought, I could sense with my bodily senses and my inner senses, if myself looking at a card she described, and I could feel the synapses happening or whatever, it's just, and I could feel myself wondering and say, yes, if I had a card in front of me right now, I can already feel the parts of my brain, the parts of my mind, parts of my being reaching out to figure them out. So I knew it. And that's when I went out and bought my first deck, my allowance money, my lawn cutting money, my newspaper delivery money, blah, blah, blah. And my first deck of cards. And this is the very deck. Even at 12, I knew to keep good care of things. The box died, of course, but it's the 1JJ Swiss Tarot.
Okay. And
the light's shit here right now, but...
and it's a Marseille deck?
It's an historic deck. It's the Besançon deck.
Okay.
And it's non-scenic pips, yeah. But it's the reason I got it's getting technical there is that the Marseille deck would still have the Pope and Popess in it.
Right.
Le Papesse. And in Besançon, it's a part of Europe where they did not appreciate papal references, so we say. And so they used Jupiter et Junon. Instead of the Pope and Popess. So Jupiter and Juno, or Zeus and Hera instead, for what we call the priestess or the Popess and the Pope. So that's just one of the main differences, because of they were non-Roman Church sort of people in that part of Europe. So, and then in Marseille, of course, well, officially, more Roman Church stuff, but differently. Come on, south of what's now France. Come on now.
Yes.
Country.
Yes.
All right. So from that moment, I sort of practiced and played with and winged it for 5-6 years. My cousins, my brother, myself, some schoolmates, and get this. As I got into high school, some of my teachers, I loved it.
Nice.
One of my French and German teacher, I better not name some, but and another French teacher later on, and who else? Some that weren't even my teachers, the guidance counselor of the school. My grade 13 English teacher, Marcia Sinclair, even had me to her house, which was a big deal for an 18 going on a 19-year-old.
Yeah, of course.
Kid, she had I think 3 friends over. She made a lunch. I got to partake in lunch. I did readings for her friends, and it gave me a bit of something for her. And it's like, wow, that's and so it was great affirmation actually for me.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And that was even before I had a system in place.
I was going to say, did you have a book that you were following, or were you just really resonating with the cards? And
yeah, I was just looking at the pattern, even on the pips that I bloody got there, like that. I could look at, the sword's going like that, and those two are like that, and those berries seem to be facing that direction, and there's more of this color than that. It just all put itself together in my head. So
yeah, and it sounds like in some ways it links to parts of the passage that you were talking about in the ESP book around, getting the sensations from the images and the connections that are happening in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading for a schoolmate of one of my stepbrothers sitting in the kitchen. He says, "I don't believe in that shit. Just do reading for me." So, yeah, I had some great. I said, "Your grandfather has an antique watch on a chain that he wants to give you, and you're going to have it by 2 weeks from now." Hell, I know that. And where's a card for that? And he came by with my stepbrother a couple weeks later and says, "You're fucking spooky." I said, "What's that?" He says, Look at this. Look at this.
Beautiful.
And to me, it says, "Yeah, okay, is it shit now?" He says, "No."
Yeah. Interesting.
That said, I don't advertise myself as a psychic, because then people expect me to do all the work, and I will not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Their life, they gotta do it.
Yeah. Well, and their life, their agency too, right? I always think.
Yeah. I mean, I can do mediumship, and I have slipped into trance the odd time, but usually more of a shamanic trance, bringing in the crone or one of the other helper spirits or something. But anyway, that's only if they trust the person to know that this is not going to be a regular occurrence.
Right.
So where do I go from there? Age 18. That's when I discovered my Bible. Choice Centered Tarot. This is the edition of it that, there it is. I had back in the day.
That's
and still have, and like how many pieces of tape?
I was going to say it has gone, and it's gone through a number of editions and a title change, and
and I've got all the editions. Gail, one time she came up to visit, she still had a small handful of the very first small print 500 copies edition, and she brought me a copy, which is very nice.
Yeah, and that's Gail Fairchild, right? You're referring to
Gail Fairfield. Yeah.
Fairfield.
Yeah, pardon me, my buttons on.
Yeah.
And this changed my life, and it changed my tarot approach. It changed my thinking. It changed for the better. And years later, I actually got to. I've had several readings with her, astrology and tarot sessions, and one of which was so extraordinary because I was going through some stuff, interactions with 3 or 4 different people that were just really, and I was doing all the stuff, talking with friends who were therapists, doing the journal stuff, doing some tarot stuff, doing the energy heal, the whole, you name it, I was doing it to work on it. So these interactions would be really clear. And right around my birthday that year, then I had booked a session with Gail, And she looked at my astrological transits. We did a spread on the issue I talked about, and said, "James, you're going to love this one." I said, "What's that?" And she said, "According to this, you've done all this. You did all the work around this long ago. It's not yours to do. Stop." It's not working because it's not yours to work on.
Right.
It's theirs. It's like,
Yeah, it's amazing when that kind of insight happens. And I know you've talked about the system that she uses as being a big influence on the practice that you've done.
I still use it.
For quite some time. Exactly.
40 years later, yeah. I still use it. The structure of the deck, as I know it, is the structure that I learned from Gail back in the 80s, and I apply it to every deck.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember you saying that, whether I don't know whether to get into this discussion or not, but the idea of the deck itself in some ways is actually irrelevant, that the work that's happening is happening through the tarot as opposed to happening through the deck that you're using.
Right. My reference deck is the tarot itself.
Right. Yeah.
The structure of the tarot itself. That's my reference deck.
Yeah.
So let the record show I did not learn on the Rider-Waite-Smith, but not that I've got anything against it. Gorgeous deck, perfect images, because Pixie did. She was a perfect stage artist, like glorious. I just bemoan the fact that people say it's the beginner's deck or it's the original deck. No, it's not.
Right.
Came like 300 years after the
right. I was going to say it's not. It's neither. It's
neither one. But I have nothing against it.
Yeah.
I just have what I have. Something against, I guess, is people's, that's the word I want, idolization of it, maybe, or pedestal putting of it. There's no such thing as a beginner's deck, and there's no such thing as a professional's deck. That, this is only for the initiated. It's what people talk about the toss deck. It's like, and they say, "Oh, it's such a difficult deck to learn." No, it's not. It's just another tarot deck.
That's an interesting. Yeah. It's an interesting, like I said, it's a very interesting and refreshing approach. Because one of the reasons why we enjoy having guests on our podcast is because we listen to differing views around how a deck is used. I was thinking of Liz Worth, and I don't know if you. Yeah, well, Liz is.
Yeah, I don't know her, but I know her enough to say hi.
And I know that when we had her on, and I've taken some of her classes, and she's very much focused on both the meaning of the tarot, but also on the image that's presented in front of you, and sometimes that changes based on, on the deck. And I always like to hold space for however people end up working with the tarot, because in some ways, when you said, the tarot deck is the entire collection of tarot itself, I sometimes think that most tarot practitioners, I'm not going to say all, because I think there are some where we're like, come on now, stop, time to stop. But, I think a lot of people, the way they use the tarot also kind of encompasses, all the interpretations. It really can sort of intertwine when it's done in a particular way. So
yeah, I sometimes just look at the picture and say, my 8+ swords thing on this just isn't going for me today. The picture is paying for me because of the question we're asking. Usually because of the picture in this deck, I say about like this or that, or the keyword on it.
Right.
I'll say this or that. I was like, but no, I've got to go with my system today. Yeah. Because it's got to fit the question. It has to fit the question.
Yes.
Otherwise, they might as well not be there.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say that element of your practice has sat with my own practice, and even my own teaching around the importance of the question that is being asked. And that sometimes, we get focused on the card itself and we forget that the premise of the insight that we're looking for comes from an initial question that we got asked.
Yeah, comes from a yearning.
100 different directions here in the first little bit.
Yeah, that's okay. This is the nature. This is like counsel. The process of counsel or being encircled together is like this. We don't do stories. Story doesn't go like that. Story is a spiral. So this is what we're doing.
I agree.
My origin story is everyone's story today. So, context is your friend. You've got a topic. You've got a spread position or question within that topic. You've got a time frame in which to explore this. why piss around by dithering about the card and forgetting what that's all about?
Yeah.
I used to put on a monthly gathering here in my place, and that got a little tiring after a while. And but there was a lovely woman who came to it. She was terrific. But when she got into practice time with people, to be like, okay, well, this card is a 4, so that is about on the tree of life, it's this, and it does not match very well with this element because of the sephirah that it's on. The name. I know you're saying her name is saying name. Could you haul all that back down to the person's question, please? If they wanted a Kabbalistic lesson, they could have hauled one of Israel Agari's books off the shelf or something.
Yep.
Yeah,
fair. That's
worthy stuff, but not very useful to hear when you're asking which of these 3 houses is my healthiest option or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I ask somebody what time is it, please? I want to hear 2:30 or 9:45. I don't want them to say roast beef and Yorkshire pudding or something like that.
Or describe the workings of a clock or how digital
Right.
time
Or
shows
how
up.
we got time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Or is the time really relevant? Shut up! I need to be somewhere. Right.
Which of the 29 time zones are you referring to, and where exactly is your relative position on Earth? Because time really matters. No, you're totally right. Yeah, I want you to pull out your phone, look at your watch, and tell me what the bloody time is. Now, it's a really good point, Jane. It's a really, really good point.
Context, and answer the contextual question. Yeah, always as there to say people watching, listening. If I want to say anything, it's always make the card fit the spread position or the question and the topic. Otherwise, we're just blowing air out various orifices.
And just to give people a little bit of a teaser, for a little bit later on, as most people who know, we're 43 episodes in. I think this is episode 43. Every episode we've done, we have always done, a card interpretation of some kind, and we've talked about, and we're actually very grateful, for your suggestion around, around the focus on questions. So we're going to shift. I'm not going to say any more than that. We're going to shift a little bit on how we work, on our one card. So stay tuned for that, please, people who are watching and listening. Exactly.
Do not change that.
No, for sure.
And I would like to read something from CCT brief, because this kind of encapsulates the feeling I've got around a lot of what we do. Page 130, top half. Okay.
Now, can I ask you, James, before you start reading it, because if anybody who is interested, because it has been retitled now, has it not?
Called Everyday Tarot now.
Everyday Tarot. Okay, thank you. So anybody who's looking, that's the copy I have here. Anybody who's ever looking, that they won't find it with Choice Center Tarot to be
right. Unless you find it in a used bookstore. Us old timers know it as Choice Center Tarot. But anyway, I feel like I don't be hearing
I still get to call you young man. Sorry, you said what date you were born in.
Oh yeah.
I got you by a little bit.
We can geese together. How's that?
Right. We totally can.
All right. Here we are. Voila. Says Gail Fairfield. Whatever the situation, remember that every reading is an opportunity for tuning in to yourself, to another person, and to the patterns of the universe. You will learn something from every reading that you do. My feeling is that when I do a reading, all the pieces of the universe and the fragments of my life make sense again. I can see the holes that unite the divisions, and I get a sense of centeredness and peace out of it. I'm taking a ride in a hot air balloon for myself or for another and sharing what I see. Even readings that involve traumatic issues imbue me with a sense of order and understanding. It is my hope that my clients also go away with a sense of order and, most important, a feeling of personal power. I want them to recognize that there are choices available to them and that they can solve their problem creatively. That's the other part that blew my mind. Is like, no, there's no fate. It's all a combination of choices that brings us to where we are, and using the tarot to help us see the options laid out, pros, cons, what supports, what detracts, who's an ally in this, who's not an ally, what's best for dinner tonight, what would make me sick for dinner, anyway, whatever.
No. Yeah,
I think
There's
Nancy
food again.
Antonucci said one time, were you going to say that, Peter?
I was. So I'm gonna go. Please go. That's exactly what I was thinking. Go ahead.
But she was like, I guess she had gone in the fridge and she was going to cook some meat, and she's like, is this meat still okay? And she was like, how much do you trust the tarot? So I think she actually used the tarot to be like, should I cook this meat or should I chuck it? So that's
That is so nooch. That is so nooch.
That's exactly totally.
She's
That's
one of my
exactly
dear friends.
No, and
totally
this is, and again, for people who are watching or listening, when we have guests on, almost anytime we would, if your name ever comes up, not only do they know you, they know and respect you, and you're connected to basically everybody in the tarot community, that I'll say in the tarot universe in most ways. So
Do a lot, yeah. There are maybe 3 or 4 that I have consciously decided need not be in my life, just because it made it a little more stressful when we interacted, let's just say.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nothing wrong with him. It was just something about our characters didn't match. So
choices,
and that's okay.
What the tarot,
and that's okay. I mean, we can't jive with everybody,
Correct.
And I respect them as tarot people, and I think they're great. We just can't get along with people. That's okay.
Correct. Now,
Yeah.
if I could ask, because you had suggested something that you were going to do with your tarot origin story.
Yes.
Is that still something? Because I think it would be a fascinating approach.
Oh, I can still do that.
Thank you.
You know I can. I will.
Oh, look, I wouldn't have. If I had thought I was putting you on the spot and you couldn't do it, I wouldn't have asked.
I know, I was too nervous. I'm like, I hope he's still going to do it.
I know.
Oh God, yes. Why would I change the show around and not do it?
And not do it.
Oh,
Did you want to give it some context so people know where we're going?
yeah. Also, I just want to do a quick.
Of course.
On the tarot journey, it's like, okay, then from that moment on, I invited Mary Greer up, got to know Rachel Pollack, started going to conferences. My interests grew out of the tarot, including nature, spirituality, 4 elements, 4 suits, everything. Circle process because of communication and holding space, healing work of various kinds, ritual work, and it all ties in. When we're doing a tarot session, it's a ritual. It calls on the powers of nature because everything's connected in nature. It brings us into counsel with one another and with our sources of wisdom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it should be a healing art at its best.
And it's such an intimate space that you're sharing with that other person. And I love how you say that you call in all of the elements, right? I connect so deeply to the tarot with the element, like that elemental approach, and really sharing that space with somebody else is like an invitation to really truly be connected to them in that moment. So thank you for explaining that, or describing that for us. So
what I often do depends on who's there. If it's somebody who's pretty comfortable with more outward creation of ritual space, shall we say, I'll say something like that. I often say, this is only practice, guys. This is not the real thing. I invite all that is life-giving, life-sustaining, and healthy life-giving and life-sustaining in the east to join us. And then I do the same with south, north, above, below, and center, the 7 directions I call. And then at the end, I thank them, and I usually say, just so that my attention to session, person, topic, cards, and whatever else floats into the session, it gets shut off, so I'm not on. I usually say in my mind, this tarot consultation is now ended, but its benefits continue.
I love that.
Yeah,
beautiful sentence.
Just so that the idea of the ending suddenly means, losing the insights. No.
Carry forward.
Because some people's unconscious kind of works in a funny way.
That's a good point.
And you
All
want
right.
them to take that support that you've given them, right? Like you've just given them like this guidance, what you've seen in this reading. And now you want them to go and take that and make decisions and take actions based on that. And it's almost like you want that follow up. See, like, did you do that thing? Like, how did it turn out? Because it is so insightful.
Yeah. And it depends on what we do. I mean, there's a four session process I do with some people, with whoever wants it, called a reason for being, and it's 4 sessions once a week for an hour each, and it's exploring why they might be here at this time. The sort of purpose, mission, your individual expression in this lifetime, whatever you want to call it, and then and your particular way of doing it and being it, and then creating. Concretizing and embodying it with a concrete project that we create doable steps and rituals and stuff for. But other than that, usually after a one-off, a session that's just about a particular topic or exploration, I've done my bit. That's theirs now.
Exactly.
If I get that curious about what they might have done or whatever afterwards, I'm not living my own life, and I'm butting in somehow, even mentally, psychically, whatever you want to say. But that's just me. Not that I don't care. It's just that I care about them enough to let them. Okay, you're an intelligent adult here, and we've had a thorough discussion and a bunch of insights around it. Go forth and be well. Now, so the thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what the tarot had to say about my tarot origin story.
This is so fun.
What its take on it? This could be surprising, and very timely. There's a woman named Leslie Patterson Marks. I think she's in Nashville, Tennessee. She created a deck called the Ephemeral Tarot, and it just arrived in the post about a couple of hours ago. The guy brought it to the door just a couple of hours ago. So I thought I'd haul that one.
Wow. Okay.
To do and I'm just going to probably riff off the pictures with this one. I'm not going to too systematic. And this is going to be about, and I'm going to speak in the third person so that so that I can be, if you're doing a reading about yourself like this, and you want it to be kind of as objective as possible, sometimes putting it in the third person is a fun idea. A good idea, because then you're just talking about somebody else.
Right.
So I'm going to draw 6 cards. I was born in the 6 months of the year, so I'm just going to pull 6 cards. How's that? And I'm going to keep it. I asked the spirit of the tarot to keep it deep but brief. So what, according to you, is my tarot origin story? I'm curious. I never thought that before until this morning. So we get, and I'll flip the cards. I'll deal them all out first, and then because I don't want to have to do that back and forth stuff. So did I see if it's okay? So what we got here? Right. Oh, the lighting. All right, I'm going to go with that as the 3 of Pentacles because it's just a bunch of discs down below. So I'm just going to show you what they are. I'm not going to interpret them as I show you because that means I have to do back and forth.
Correct.
3 of Pentacles. The Surrender card, which is the Hangman.
Okay.
So we got here. We have the Unseeable print. Jesus Christ. The Guide of Cups. The Guide of Cups.
Okay.
Which I assume is like a knight. So I've not looked at the book yet. I don't care. Then we've got the Guardian of Cups.
Okay.
Guardian of Cups,
Okay.
which I think feels a bit like a queen.
Queen. I'm thinking of Joanna's deck too. Guardian would be cool.
Yeah. And Transition, which is death.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow.
And lastly, we've got Restriction, which would be the devil. Another deck. All right, so Carol, speak to us. What's James's tarot origin story? At the age of 3, he's been playing with friends, and he kept giving these he'd give lighthearted, insightful zaps into their lives, and they would wonder how he knew. And as he sprouted and grew, he surrendered to it. He thought, I don't care what my Aunt Betty thinks. I don't care that my other grandmother is a little scared of it. I'm growing into who I need to be, and I need a deck of cards. This is the 12th card. I was 12 years old. And then he got these beautiful mentors who came along. They guarded him. They nourished him like rain nourishes the soil. And he realized with great clarity that he needed to leave his professional music thing full-time to do tarot and all the healing insight stuff full-time, because the music led him into that. And as he grew into this, he became a guardian of the mysteries. He became truly embodying his high priestess soul card, because he is, in his deep soul, a priestess. He is from childhood until death. The ancestors of his family see the symbol of the fish as a child. He is an eternal child who plays with symbols, and he is he's like the Flying Dutchman of the ship. He travels the world for eternity because he cannot die, because he is one of the transcendent symbols that exists for all time. He is living tarot, and he is the death of tarot. When he dies, his skin will become somebody's cards. When he dies, his memory will be a blessing and a shrine to the cards. He will be remembered in a garden that is fed with his own flesh and blood and insight and earned wisdom. He is the Carlos. Are you saying that, Betty? And what he most needs to know about this journey, his story, is this is his final time. It's his resurrection. He was doing this once before, and now he is bringing it to its pinnacle for him, his soul's pinnacle. It missed it from before. He did this before, and his soul is now reaching the pinnacle of working with the symbols and ritualizing with the symbols and living with the symbols and being the symbols as much as it is able in this embodied lifetime. He is about embodying the cards in this lifetime, and that is his uniqueness. He brings it. You live the tarot. You are living tarot. As a practitioner, you are a living deck of cards. You are a living symbol. Do you hear? Well, those spoke, huh?
Hmm.
I don't know what they said all the way. I lost track partway through. I just sort of went somewhere.
You'll have to rewatch the. You'll have to watch it. It was fascinating, James, to receive that message. Wow.
I got my sense was there was something that wasn't just about my tarot origin story. I think it started to grow into everybody's.
I would agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, and
I don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
When you said you were the living tarot, I'm like, that like sent chills in my body, because I'm like, that's what we do. We live the tarot. They're messages. It's a way of light. Like, it's how we sort of see the world. So that was beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the latter half of it, because I think I did the thing I rarely do, and start to allow the symbols to take me to trance.
Well, and thank you, and again, thank you for allowing us to be witness to that as well, and to those who are going to watch that, because it really was, you again, not being aware, but even being aware of Bonnie and our response as a story itself, and as you told it both, through your own words, and then through perhaps words of others or words spoken through you. It really did kind of thread a narrative that captured us, that really talked both about your story, but I think you're right. I think transitioned into a story that became that much greater than yours. Then it became a story that really did touch on everyone and everything about the tarot.
My soul, my inner self is saying to me, this wasn't meant to, I didn't want this whole damn thing to be about just you, This is not what this show's about, so smart enough. So
but we learn from each other. And we're so if we go back, I was thinking about that this morning. We're all connected on some level, right? And by you being here and sharing your passion and insight and wisdom, that's helping the collective. We are all experiencing this together. So although you think it's not about me, but it's about all of us and what you're sharing and us receiving, that is such a gift.
Yeah, I think what my soul is saying is, they heard enough about your story. Let's expand it, please. And take it to the collective, which by the way brings up something that's of great interest and I think and value to me, and is dear to me, and I think should be dear to more. And that is that whatever kind of practitioner we are, whether the tarot or astrologers like Kelly, whether we are energy healers, whether we're Tai Chi teachers, whether we are ritual drummers, whether we are visual artists or psychotherapists, I think it behooves us to remember that we need to go beyond the personal of the person who, whether that's ourselves, who is our reedy or whatever you want to call it, querent or whatever that word is.
No.
Or whether that's ourselves, and it's because quite often what comes up, it doesn't happen with everybody, but more times in the last few years, it's come up that when a person and I, a client and I are exploring whatever it is with the cards and the questions that we've on which we've overlain them. God, man. I'm still partly in that state, I guess.
Yeah. It's okay.
That the question comes up, where is this also in your family lineage? Where is this in your community right now?
Right.
Where is this happening in the body of the earth? Where is this happening? What is the manifestation or expression? How is the body politic expressing what's going on in your psyche or in your body? Let's say there's let's say we're exploring something that has to do with, they want to know which of these physicians and specialists and therapists, whatever, is going to be best for their condition they're going through with their nervous system. For instance, I don't know why that's coming to mind, but there it is. And maybe they've got neuropathy or whatever. Anyway, some neurological thing. Let's say then we say, okay, well, the cards are saying there may be something about being very literal. Maybe I get maybe I get a 6 of Pentacles. So sixness for me would be over and over again, pattern, a cycle, doing something repeatedly, amongst other things. And the Pentacles upright might be about the body, just like that. Pay attention on a regular basis, what's happening to the body, and like literally the body itself. What is happening regularly? What do you notice? What is the pattern in your body?
Right.
Good. All right. So what is literally happening in your body when the nerves are doing such and such? What happens? So something is not getting transmitted from here to here. And the person might say something like, "Oh, that sounds a lot like that thing that just came up in the news the other day." It's like, that came into the session, so now it's part of this.
The session, right.
It's come in, so now it is part of your session, and now it is part of your healing.
Right.
Through working on this thing with this nerve condition, you are now working on the transmission of information or lack thereof in this particular government body or bank body or whatever it is.
Right.
And you are not separate from that now. By working on you will, and this particular condition, you will be addressing that thing, the energy behind what just happened that you saw on the news.
Right.
And if you address that thing that happened in the news, it will work on your body. That's just an example that I don't know flew out of, but
no, but it would, and I guess I'm thinking of the origin of that idea, and what it makes me think of in a lot of ways is the interconnectedness of all things. Whereas when we look at a question or a topic by using, really any modality, but here let's talk about the tarot in this space, that in a lot of ways to assume that it is talking solely about us is arrogant. If it brings in something like, let's say it is a news story, the community that we're in, that our story may in some ways be impacting that other element. Am I understanding that correctly? So whether it is politic, whether it's my neighbor, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a friend, whether it's a stranger, it's somebody that, we had a brief interaction with, whether, it's the neighboring town.
It's the whole web of existence.
Correct. Yeah.
And all the creatures and all the beings. Whether it's the waters of the waters of a particular place, what's happening in the waters of the world there? Why is this concerning you so much? Why are you bringing this to your tarot session today? Where is this in you? We're going to look at where this is in you now too,
right.
Or whatever, and say, oh, you've got that going on. Okay, and it's really about looking at the story there, and then finding the healing story in the ailment story.
Yeah.
I remember Dina Metzger, who when we had the Toronto Dare here in Toronto, which was a council for peacemaking and healing for 7.5 years, I think. I was one of the conveners of that group, and we would not only hold the community circles, it was a larger community to which anyone was invited to come. We also, as conveners, like 10 of us, met in council too, and half in between, and we would do some intense work on ourselves on behalf of the community that was also on behalf of all life. And and anyway, Dina Metzger was one of our mentors, and she's a poet, author, medicine woman, council holder, a brilliant teacher in Topanga Canyon, California. And she came up a couple of retreats with us. And something stuck with me from September 2008. We were at farm in MacArthur's Mills, north of here. And one night in council, I can say this because it's wisdom meant to be taken out, said, people, the time for the luxury of personal neuroses is over. The time for the luxury of personal neuroses is over. There's too much to do on behalf of all of life. Maybe after we solve that, we can get back to our shit,
Interesting.
And there is. Look at this. You look at this year.
Yes.
I was working with a group online down in the States last week, and it was part 2 of something I started in December with them too. It wasn't just about that. I called it We Interrupt This Century, and I was using tarot with them combined with creating what I call it. Let's call it imaginary. A space and time and process in which the imagination has free reign. That's basically it. And then this past time I used some of Angie Arian's fourfold way material as well to help ground it in action and stuff. So the tarot is a really good map if you know a structure, whatever. It doesn't have to be the same one I use, but if you have a structure or a kind of an outline of how the deck might work for you, it can be a map for you for how you can live. Oh, I'm having an identity crisis. I'm in a 5 of Wands moment. I don't know who I am right now. Oh God. Oh, maybe who do I want to be? I want to be the Queen of Wands. I want to be my most empowered self. Oh, what are the steps in between? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Maybe I can just make a doable action based on each of those cards in between. Something like that.
Right.
You don't even need to do a reading, but you can certainly take it to a reading. And where was I going with that?
Well, no, because it's because I don't know if you we're so engaged in, because when you talk about the idea of the 5 of Wands, the Queen of Wands, I don't know if you watch Bonnie, but discussing that path, and this is something that we do have talked about here before on this podcast, is that there are times when there's an intentionality that happens inside the tarot, because the pathway from, like you said, the 5 to the Queen is a narrative. There's a story there, and that to take that story and to turn it in, perhaps, and just to use one example, the way to use it is to use it in tangible steps. And then, to sort of spring off of what you said, you said, well, from the 5, you go to the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9, the 10, and then if it's, whatever it happens to be, if it's page knight to queen, that is 7 or 8 steps. Does it then prompt a plan where it says, okay, well, what 7 or 8 things do I need to do? And then what do they look like in the guise of the 6 of Wands, and then the 7 of Wands, and then the 8 of Wands? And how can I connect that story that has already been told for hundreds of years through thousands of decks? How can I connect that to my own personal story? How do I make that a pathway to take me from where I feel like I am in my 5 of Wands space to where I want to be, to my Queen of Wands space? I don't know if that's how you intended to tell this. That is how I took it. Anyways, that is.
I took it as, okay, it's one way to do it. It's like, all right, I feel like I'm here. I'd like to be there in this particular part of my life. Let's say Wands for me being about identity and self and how we name ourselves and independence, blah, blah, blah. And then 5's just being about change.
Yeah.
And change can sometimes be making little tweaks and adjustments to something, or it could be, a firestorm or something, whatever. And then the Queen for me is like the apotheosis, the maturity of the suit. And then people say, well, what's about the King? Like, he lets things go then. He's ready to let it go. That's based on what I learned from Gail 40 years ago.
Well, because when we were talking about, kind of alluding to what we were going to do with sort of the last section of our podcast, you had talked about you had talked about us asking, if I understood it correctly, that we asking a question, and that you would draw each of us asking a question, and that you would draw one card only, and then apply that card to each of the 3 questions. The idea,
absolutely correct.
Yeah, the idea being that the context of the question impacts the interpretation of the card, and the only reason. And the only reason it made me think of it is because when you floated that idea by pre-podcast, I wrote my question down and my question very much has to do with the concept that you talked about, the idea of something that is beyond our own personal story, and the idea of tarot as a step. My question I asked was first step, because at the time to go into significant steps. So it just. And I don't know if that's a segue, how are we time-wise, Bonnie? Is that?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
Because we could talk to you for hours, James, honestly.
Totally.
Oh, I could go on and on.
Well, we'll tell you the same thing, so I don't forget, we tell every single guest, this is always a safe space for anybody who comes and wants to come again and again and again. We are always, always, always happy to chat tarot with anyone who will chat tarot. We're always blessed when someone of your knowledge and your experience and I'll say stature and influence will come in and join our humble little space here of of tarot with Bonnie and Peter. But
Okay, so how do we want to do this, James? Do you want us to each tell you our question? Like,
yeah, I forgot to write mine down. So, but my understanding is what we usually do is a single card is drawn at the end of each show, right?
Each of us would draw a single card, but that's correct. So
Right.
this is different here, and we're pretty excited.
We love
pretty
this.
excited about this.
All right. Yeah. Just shaking it up.
All right. No, that's good.
That's what we need. See, you said that 5 of Wands for a reason, like let's let's shake things up. Like, get some change in here.
All right, Bonnie, you thinking of a question as well?
I have my question. Yes.
Okay. What is it, Bonnie, please?
Okay. Funny that you mentioned Queen of Wands. She's my hero. She's who I aspire to be. And that's a little similar to the question that I have. So I'm very big on setting intentions. One of my intentions recently is about having the capacity to receive with ease. And that can come in many different forms. So my question is, what advice or what can support me to be open to receiving with ease?
Or to be able to receive with ease, is that it?
Yep.
You want to get
and that could be, like kind of broad, but that could be, financial. That could be a compliment, like just
Precisely.
any type of, yeah.
About what can support you to be open to receive? Is that your wording?
Yep.
Good.
Or to, increase my capacity to receive.
I like that. Yeah. To increase. Now my writing turns like a serial killer here. Right.
It can't be worse than my husband's. He's left-handed. Are you left-handed, Peter?
No,
yes, I am.
No.
You're not left-handed. Oh, you are. Yeah.
I
So
am
he's left-handed.
Right.
Oh my goodness, his writing.
Increase your capacity to receive. Okay. Pray that I can read my writing. Okay. So I'm always trying to write as quickly as I can. Peter, what do you got?
So for me, the context was, and I wrote this down. I was thinking kind of globally. Pessimism is everywhere. I work hard at keeping an optimistic outlook, maybe because my default temperament is actually melancholic. So the optimism is something I've worked towards. I'm struggling lately. So what steps, or maybe the tarot can offer a first step, can I take to return to a more optimistic mindset?
So what first step can you take to returning to
a more optimistic mindset? Correct.
To return, yes, good. To a more optimistic.
I love that you're writing them. For those that aren't watching but are listening, James is writing the questions down. So I love that.
Always.
Thank you. Well, it honors the question in a lot of ways. And,
when I'm working with somebody, I always do an intake process beforehand. So I have them say what's on their mind. I create questions out of that, create a spread out of it. And then all they have to do is check in. Oh, does this spread cover what you want to look at? Oh my God, yes.
You don't have to tell me. I have a half journal that would probably be called the James Wells Journal, in which nuggets of your wisdom, including responses to your readings, are sitting in and are still on the shelf here in my office. So I've seen this process in action.
You have.
And then your question.
Mindset. What is my question? My question is, what is the cure for greed? Which seems to be the disease that's prominent these days.
Well, yes.
What is the cure for greed? That just popped into my head and says, yes, that feels authentic. Fuck it. All right, everything's dropping here. Good. Listen here. I'm going to go to my original childhood deck, 1JJ Swiss.
Wow.
Still in very good condition.
That is
nice. All right, so let's just all sandwich, and I'm going to interpret it 3 times. So when I pull a card, so first of all, what can support Bonnie to increase her capacity to receive? What first step can Peter take to return to a more optimistic mindset? And what is the cure for greed? And a wisdom source, we ask that you present it all in one card. Thank you. And it can be done because that's our intention. And a strong intention is the key. Chariot reversed. Damn it, the light. There we are.
There we go.
The chariot reversed. Just so people know, reversals to me do not mean the opposite. If it were something else, it would be a different card. So, yeah, but reversals just make it more subtle, inner, unconscious, slow, quiet, whatever. So now, in general, the chariot for me is being in control of a fast-moving process of some kind. And the reversal would make it some kind of inner or quiet. All right, so what can support Bonnie to increase her capacity to receive? To remember that the only manager of your emotions is you. If anybody else tries to manage them, kick them out because they're being a backseat driver. Right. But that's all I want to say about that one.
It makes perfect sense.
Okay. I often say to clients, if I said any more about it, I'd be bullshitting. So, all right. So, Peter, what first step can you take to return to a more optimistic mindset? Well, I'm afraid the answer is the same.
I was gonna say it's the same.
Also, with the addition for you of a little extra coming in, you've already done a mental, emotional, psycho-spiritual inner journey process in the past. Repeat it.
Okay. All right.
That journey, that particular well-managed process that you did that kept the emotional stuff on the road. Repeat it, please. That's what your inner self is saying.
That definitely makes sense. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I love
Sometimes the reversal takes to say, what you did before, remember that?
Turn of a cycle.
Me, yeah, welcome. What is the cure for greed? For God's sake, steer and manage yourself. People, meaning me, everyone. It's like the cure for greed is knowing that we are the fuel for it. we are its fuel. It's like chariot is a vehicle.
Vehicle, yeah, that's what I was thinking when you said.
We can the reversal sort of bring it into ourselves and our psyches and stuff. It's our psyches who are steering it, and it's our desire to be in control of ourselves and our inner lives that makes us greedy, it's saying. And so the cure for greed is to know that the same vehicle, don't say that, that's a bad joke. We don't want to bring Tesla in right now. All right.
Or tariffs on automobiles. We don't want to touch that today.
No, we don't. So, but the cure for greed it's about we are also the vehicles for generosity, and we are the vehicles for spirit and soul and well-being, and it boils down to we are the managers of ourselves. I think for all of this, all three questions of it, it boils down to people. You are the managers of yourselves and your inner life. And that includes whether it's greed, whether it's melancholy, whether it's a reluctance to be open to saying, it's like our souls are saying collectively, so what? Who's going to change it?
Right. Our own drivers. We're the drivers of our own vehicles in some way, in whatever capacity.
It's like, James, you don't want to see greed, don't be greedy, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bonnie,
that was beautiful. And I'm just seeing the connection with the chariot and the number 7 and that introspection and that, going within and really finding ourselves, right? So that speaks so beautifully with the energy of that card and what you brought to that. So thank you so much, James. That was Yeah, it's such an easy answer. It's kind of like stay in your own lane. Like you are, right? If we
Yeah.
think about the chariot as a vehicle, when
Yeah.
we change ourselves, then that, like we're so worried about changing everybody else, but it's like change comes from within, not trying to, so.
Yeah. I've got a friend on the West Coast who has a manager who is a pain in the ass because she's so concerned about what everybody else is doing around the place of work that she's completely incompetent, and yet she's the one in charge, and so she starts pissing out on everybody else, and consequently a shitty manager, and because she doesn't stay in her own lane.
Right.
And so that's a really good way to put chariot. I mean, if we're upright like that, it would say, get out and some more world lanes out there. But I like the way you said that. So that fits reverse chariot very nicely. Stay in your own goddamn lane.
You see, and then it's a statement that kind of adds when we talk about that idea of the tarot being the collective, Bonnie, you by using that kind of phrase and throwing that out for that particular card as well. That is now, that's now part
that is now in the collective tarot compendium.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Wherever that is.
Yeah, and go back to the idea of that idea of the narrative when you were talking about your tarot story, that the tarot story is not just about you, and Bonnie just added to that tarot story as well. Since
thank you for the addition.
You too.
Oh my goodness, what can I offer to? I'm like humbled.
Just did
receive the compliment.
That's right.
Okay, there you go.
I love that.
God damn it.
90 seconds after the question. There you go.
Just a reminder. Receive the compliment.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you, Tarot.
Yes, thank you, Tarot. And thank you, James. Oh my goodness. It has been such an honor to have you. You have to, if you'll come back, we would love to have you. But
I will come back.
Yay.
Please.
I would love to.
Do you want to let everybody know where they can find you, or if you have anything coming up that you want to share?
You got nothing coming up really. I'm staying pretty quiet. I'm not going to conferences much these days because I'm just not traveling. I don't trust most humans' well-being, and I especially don't trust their intelligence around their well-being. It's not cynicism if I'm right.
Fair point. Fair point.
Also, I've grown less and less fond of traveling great distances. I like being there, but I don't like the process of getting there and getting back, and it's becoming harder for various reasons. And so I tend to do the things locally. Like I'm going to be there's something coming up, and in Font Hill, Ontario. My friend Jane and her husband Chris are going to host me. I have no idea what the topic is going to be yet, but it's going to be on the final Sunday in May.
Okay.
Whatever that is. Final Sunday in May. I will be in Font Hill, Ontario, which is in the Niagara region. So if any watchers, listeners are in or near Niagara, or if you feel like you've got a trip to Niagara, doing the Sunday workshop with me in the morning and then do a winery tour somewhere, why not? And then other than that, what else have I done? I'm planning, I'm sort of slowly allowing the things that want to come to me. And one of the things that's come to me is sometime this coming summer of 2025, there will be a one-day, there'll be a one-day tarot day camp. And I did this a few years ago, and people quite liked it. So be here at my place and in Craigley Gardens, the lovely park that is
beautiful,
just around the bend from me. And for those who are, for whom it is physically able, if you feel like going down the path toward the ravine, you can do that. If you are feel less comfortable in terms of mobility, you don't have to go down that path. There's lots of nature land in my neighborhood. So, and so we'll be doing things like a tarot scavenger hunt. We'll be doing what else? A couple of tarot games, that are actually in which you end up surprising yourself into empowerment and insight. What else? We might be doing some role play and acting and stuff like that with the cards, and just generally having a good time, and
Perfect.
break for a little picnic lunch and all that kind of stuff.
Sounds wonderful. I think you might just see
Yeah.
Bonnie and
And
I.
for those who
there.
want to hang out with me afterwards, we'll come back to
You
maybe
might
I'll
see
make a.
Peter and I like
Oh, yeah.
crashing your party.
That's
All
right.
right. Do. Yeah. And for maybe I'll make a big pot of pate de fagioli or something afterwards, and people can come to the apartment and do that.
Perfect.
And then in terms of getting hold of me, for personal consultations or whatever, which are either an hour or an hour and a half long, your choice, depending on what you want to look at. Email or telephone are the best. I don't have a cell phone. It is a landline call. I don't do same day. It is by appointment only because I want to be as present with people as possible. If it comes charging in the door and I'm come charging in the door and we're not prepared, it doesn't work. And I like to be as present with people as possible. And also, it gives both of us a chance to prepare. I do a little intake process, as I said, in which I just ask 3 or 4 questions and people respond to it. And based on the responses, I create the spreads for the reading, spreads for the reading. And yeah, that's for that. So the email address, which is best to get me, is got you right. circlewaysjames. No, wrong. circleways.james@gmail.com. So circleways, all lowercase, all one word. The ways of circle. circleways.james@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll include that. We'll include that in the show notes also.
Yeah, and then yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. Because I thought, well, I could type it out, but and then phone 416. Yes, I'm still a 416er. 416-966-2685. 416-966-2685. And yeah, people want to work with me. I would love to do that. Try out how I do things. Find out a bit more about themselves, what's going on, and the things that they're carrying in their heart and mind. I'm happy to, and honored to companion them through that with the cards. And yeah, good. And as I say, I also do a 4-session series on to explore, dig into, find some things about purpose, mission, your personal expression this lifetime, and to create an embodied sort of project for yourself to show yourself, yeah, I'm really living this. And just send an email to say hi if you like.
Wow.
That you heard Insomnia on the show.
That's what an invitation that is. Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I have totally found this a treat today.
Excellent. Well, look, I mean, I said how I felt at the very beginning. So, there's no, I don't think that, I'll hide my emotions as to it was absolutely a treat. Maybe I'll let Bonnie kind of sign us off. You can do that.
Yeah, James, honestly, this is a treat for me. I mean, I have met you personally one time, but going through this experience with you, I feel like I'm having an out of body experience. Actually, it's been so much fun. Sharing your wisdom with us, sharing your wisdom with the world is such a treat. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in. If you like this episode, please leave us a really nice review. You can comment, let us know what you'd like us to talk about in future episodes. Or again, if you just want to say hi, share this with people that love tarot as much as you do. And yeah, we want to say thank you so much again. And we will see you next time on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter.
And share it with people who don't even like the cards, actually.
There you go.
Thank you.
Perfect. Share it with everybody and anybody. Everybody and anybody.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So long.
Thank you.